employees thrive professionally and personally. And Bright Horizons operates approximately 1,000 early education and childcare centers in the U.S. alone, as well as the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and India, and serves more than 1,350 of the world's leading employers. And so as we move into this next panel, I'm so excited to bring up Tara Clark, who is the creator of Modern Mom Problems. Tara will be joining me on the stage.
Hi there, am I live?
Hopefully. And this is one of the things that we love. So on this panel as well, I'm going to help bring up some of our other panelists while Tara is loading. So we have Rachel Robertson, who's the VP of Education and Development at Bright Horizons, Dr. Nefertiti Proner, Early Childhood Specialist and National Trainer, and Miriam Williams, who's the co-founder of Superkin. So I'll welcome these ladies up right now who can join me on stage. Awesome. Tara, can you hear me okay? Is it coming across?
You.
I can see you.
Can you guys hear me?
I'll let you take it right away.
You guys hear me? I'm cool? We're good?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Kristen. I really appreciate that. Sorry for any crazy technology stuff, but you know, it's Friday and the computers have had a long week just as we have. So, as she mentioned, I am Tara Clark, founder of Modern Mom Probs, and I just want to take a second to thank Mother Honestly partner Bright Horizons for bringing this amazing panel together. And it's so important that we have the conversation about early childhood education and its importance for developing the future generation. I am joined by three powerhouse women today. Our first speaker is Rachel Robertson. She's VP Education and Development at Bright Horizons. Next up, Nefertiti Proner. She is an early childhood specialist and national trainer. And Miriam Williams, who is the co-founder of Superkin. Hello, ladies. Before we jump into our conversation, let's do a couple quick introductions, and I'm going to start with Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I am the Vice President of Education and Development, as Tara mentioned, at Bright Horizons, where we support the learning and development of thousands and thousands of children, but also educators and families. And probably most importantly, I am also a mother. I am on the other side. I have a 19-year-old and a 23-year-old.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Nefertiti, let's go over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Nefertiti Proner. I am an early childhood specialist and national trainer with the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children. And what that means is each day we get to study the research on how to help our babies, toddlers, preschoolers be more resilient. But the only way we can really do that is to also work with the adults who love them and educate them. So that is the work that I have the joy of sharing my hours of working with. But just like Rachel, I'm a mom too. I've got a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old. On any given day, you can't tell which is which, but that's a whole nother summit. And I'll talk to you later.
We might circle back on that one. Miriam, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks, Tara. I'm so happy to be here with everyone today. I'm Miriam Williams. I'm one of the co-founders of Superkin. You may recognize us or this t-shirt, Add to Resume, Grew a Human. Some of the amazing panelists on the last conversation have definitely been spotted in our tee. And we launched the campaign to bring awareness to the critical leadership skills and empathy that parents build when they're raising humans. And we work with ERG leaders and HR leaders to go beyond parental leave, building programming, events, content, and benefits advisory services to support caregivers at work. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. I live here with my husband and my just turned 5-year-old son, David.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to speak about early childhood education. Rachel, I'm going to start with you. You are often asked the difference between daycare, childcare, preschool, pre-K. What does quality childcare look like, and what should parents look out for?
Yeah, this is a big question, so and I could talk about it for hours. So I'm going to do my best to distill this down into some really tangible takeaways that make make sense for people you can act on. So first of all, I would just say, don't get distracted by the names. There's a lot of naming that means nothing about the quality. So if you see something called Little Scholars with promises of PhDs, sometime in the future, don't get distracted by that. That's marketing. That's not about quality. So we want to, and then I'm not a fan of the term daycare, although it's used in the mainstream a lot, but we can all help elevate the really important work of early care and education. So, but people use that term. So we just take a look at what's happening in the program, get away from what they're calling themselves and what the name of it is. Some of the names do indicate a philosophy, like Montessori. So you'll want to verify that. You'll want to understand that. At Bright Horizons, we use a constructivist emergent approach called discovery-driven learning. So our philosophy is in the name. So that's something you'll really want to ask about, because you want to make sure that aligns with what the research tells us is right for kids, but also what's important to you as a parent. And then if we're looking at quality, we can really distill it down into a couple things. Safety and cleanliness, that's a given. So you want to look for that, but you also just want to make sure that the program or the provider you're choosing is licensed. And you can get that information on local websites, but you can also ask them for it. So that's just the standard. That's the threshold. Above that, you want to look for really quality interactions between the adults and the children. You want to see adults on the floor. You want to see adults respecting children. You want to see the children reflected in the classroom, not a teacher-designed classroom. You want to know that children's interests and their curiosity and exploration is at the center of that experience. And you want to see lots of play. You want to see play cannot be overstated. You do not want to see kids doing worksheets and rotating from this session to this session, or lots of classes and transitions. You want to see a lot of open-ended experiential play. If you see those things, you're probably on track for a quality program.
Excellent. Those are all really good suggestions. So Miriam, you mentioned you have an almost 5-year-old son, right? He also was in early childhood care. What was that like for you as a parent, as a working parent? And how did you see your child benefit from the program?
Yes. Well, I learned very early on that whoever, as a working mom, whoever is taking care of my son is the most important person in the world. And I love, Rachel, what you said about elevating care, because it's critical that we really honor and respect that work. And my son was, when he entered a group care, daycare group when he was 16 months old. And it was like night and day. Overnight, he just started blossoming, learning new things. It was unbelievable the way that he grew just from the socialization, from being around other kids. And, it was so exciting to see him be able to play with toys that we don't have at home. One day he was a chef, the next day he was a musician. He really got to access and live sort of, a different experience every day. And I felt, as a mom that's of course going to work every day, it was so important that I knew he was happy there and that he was growing, because, that dreaded drop-off moment, I've got to leave and go to work. And I never felt the guilt, because I knew he was going to have a great day. And that is, I think, so powerful and such a critical part of keeping moms in the workforce.
Absolutely. I think that is probably one of the single most critical things to keeping moms in the workforce, right? So Nefertiti, my next question is to you. There's often so much guilt and anxiety that we as working mothers feel when we're dropping our child off in the care of someone else, right? It's natural. We all go through it, right? How can parents let go of that feeling?
Well, it's not going to be easy, but I think one of the first things to do is to remember why you're going to work. Most of us are going to work to pursue an occupation and or an occupation. And I think there is a distinct difference between those two things. Your occupation is just what you do to earn a paycheck, but your occupation is your opportunity to live out your life's purpose. And when we choose childcare for our children, we are going out so we can live out our life's purpose. And so I think one of the best things to do is, first of all, acknowledge that this feels different. And just say hello to that feeling, we like to say. And then remember why you're going to work. Your children, our children, get an opportunity to see us living out our passions. I talk to both of my children about my work. I watch my daughter pretend to do webinars. Like that's what this has come to. Her pretend play now is made up of watching mommy do her webinars. But what my girls both see mommy do is to live out her passion. My mom was a social worker for all of her life. And one day she met a guy at the mall, and he was so excited to see her. And my mom had some just some casual conversation. And we walked away. She said, "Nefertiti, I have no idea who that is." And so my mom said, I've changed so many lives, but I watched her be unhappy. And so sometimes when things were difficult for me in a work environment, I thought that's what had to happen. But I want my children to see mommy living out her occupation. And to do that did require, as Miriam said, I had to meet some new besties. And so today, as we also talk to the moms, I want you to remember, get to know that person too. One of the best things you can do to ease some of your anxieties is really get to know that person. We do this exercise in training where I tell the participants, take out the most important thing you have with you today. And they kind of look at me like, where is she going with this? And I say, put it in the palm of your hand. And they do it. And then I try to get them up out of their seats and stand next to a person they don't know. And they're looking at me like, all right, lady, where is this going? But with that item in their hand, I ask them to give it to the person next to them. And then I say, if I feel the room is safe enough, I say, now I want that person to walk away from you. And sometimes they look at me and say, I've enjoyed my time with you, Nefertiti, but I'm not doing that. But then we freeze in that moment and we say, that's what families do every day when they bring their children to our care. And so as parents, what can we do to ease some of that anxiety? Remember why you're choosing to do it. It's so that your children can see you living out your life's passions and purpose, and then get to know that person. Really get to know that individual. And that may be some things that help, although it's still going to be a little hard, but it won't last always.
That is so beautiful. I love that idea of that exercise. I think that is so, so important. That actually leads us to our next question. And this is a question for all three of us, or all three of you. Of course, not everyone has access to quality childcare, either because of cost or location. How can families partner with that childcare provider? As Nefertiti said, it's so important to have that good relationship with them. How can families partner with that provider, and in terms of helping the learning and development process?
I can jump in here because I want to also build on what Nefertiti said. So I'm gonna take a little liberty here and say I can't emphasize what she said the most. If I go back to my list about saying you want to look for play and you want to look for good teacher-child or adult-child interactions, having a place that invites families in and treats families as if this is a partnership. We're here together for this child. We each have a role. You learn about me, I learn about you. Let's do what's right for your individual child. That's a real mark of quality too. You deserve that as families. You should be asking for that as families. And to know about the educators, to know how the organization you're choosing to have your child spend time with, how much do they invest in their educators? Do educators have a pathway for their own development? Do they have ongoing opportunities to learn? There's so many of them out there. So you want to make sure that that is a priority, because an investment in the educators is an investment in your children. So ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask that kind of the question, where do parents fit into this? Do I have access to everything? Are we partners together? Don't be nervous about that, because we are in this together. And if you're not finding that in a program or in a provider, you're going to want to find somewhere else, because those are marks of quality and what you deserve as working parents as well. So to your question, this is a tricky one because we want to make sure that children are in quality care. And like I said earlier, sometimes it's a lot more simple than people are thinking. Again, you don't need these fancy programs and technology and a bunch of worksheets and testing. You don't want any of that in early childhood. What you want to look for is those things I've already mentioned. So that can be easier to find sometimes. And that's the baseline of quality. Certainly you can look for more and that elevates the quality, but you don't want to look for less. You want to make sure whether you're having an in-home provider or you're going to a program or you're maybe using an in-home childcare program, that you focus on things like reading. You can supplement what your children are doing in a program or help your provider do things like high quality literature, and reading lots all the time cannot be overstated how important that is. Having good, rich dialogue and conversation. And I've already said this, but I'll say it again, is just getting out there in the world. Don't look for a technology program, go to a museum. Don't look for some boxed curriculum you need to use. Go outside and explore the world. Ask real open-ended questions. Let the child tell you what they're interested in, and then go with that. Do experiments on that. That kind of thing, if you're promoting that as a family and you are supporting your providers promoting those and elevating those things, that will help improve the quality of any program that your child is involved in. And it will also help you supplement that if you're worried about the quality. The other thing, I'll just mention one more thing. I specifically to this audience, I want to say that we should all be advocating for childcare. Miriam was talking about this too, is we all as working parents deserve high quality childcare for our children. While I'm sharing a few ideas to supplement if you're worried about the quality or you can't find the quality that you're interested in, we deserve the quality. So we should be advocating for that, whether it's the government investments, but also employer investments. And employers can do a lot of things to support working families and working mothers, whether it's a small business that supports discounts or backup days, or maybe a consortium center with other small businesses, or large businesses often have on-site childcare. We work with thousands of clients at Bright Horizons that really successfully support their working families. It's great for their business and it's great for children. So they're really supporting two workforces at once, all of us that are working, and that next workforce. It's hard to think of those 3-year-olds as our next workforce, but they are. So we want to make sure that we're supporting them as well. They will be in charge of us one day.
Miriam, you ready? I'll go after you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to build on something that Rachel said around I totally lost my train of thought, but I'm going to just share that the thing that I've always loved about David's, my son's preschool or his in-home care, his group care solution was that, we're just two parents, my husband and I, and, the educators that my son has been, has been with have met hundreds, if not thousands of children. And so whenever we come to kind of like a roadblock or a regression, it's always been so helpful to have another adult who knows my son really well. And also doesn't get David saves his worst behavior for me. So he's the least rational, the least, he's obviously perfect and adorable, but he saves the worst of it for me. So it's been really helpful, I'll just say potty training, in having a partner who really has been there before and can guide us through that. So, and on the employer, I remember what I was going to say on the employer side. We've done some research at Superkin through our community to understand what kind of benchmarks there are around both parental leave and kind of going beyond that. And we found that employees who have those additional childcare benefits are more satisfied, happier with their employers. So it's such a leading indicator of happiness and retention, is whether or not their employers are kind of supporting the care options. So really love to hear that from Rachel.
I love what Miriam said when she said be a partner. Well, I think that is so important. And I think if we really want to think about ways as moms to really support the person who's caring for our little one, is to slow down and play tennis. So I'm going to answer this question both as a professional, but also as someone who has done the work as a childcare teacher. Sometimes it appears as a mom, I run in, I grab all my things, and then I run out. Sometimes the feeling that your child's teacher will have is one of loneliness. And so one of the best ways we can support our children's teacher is to make sure we slow down and play tennis. And when I say play tennis, I mean just those casual conversations of, good morning, Miss Miriam, how are you? I heard dinner last night was amazing. And then maybe Miriam would say something back to me that lets me know that she noticed something that I was doing with her little one. Because the field can feel very, very lonely, moms. And sometimes we're thought of as babysitters, and we have a little statement that we say to each other. I've never sat on one baby, so I'm not a babysitter. I am a teacher. And when someone says, well, what grade do you teach? I teach 12-month-olds. That's what I do. And so might I impress upon all of us to remember that it really does take a village. And we may start the work at home, but you really start the work in the classroom. The work starts at home first. We're actually building on what you're doing. So if we can remember to slow down and play tennis, which sometimes means put your cell phone down. And I feel like I can say this safely because I'm talking to myself too. Like what's getting in the way of me being able to really check in and play tennis? And if you ever have to throw an egg, mom, because early identification happens now. And so just as Miriam said, maybe we're both seeing something that we can begin to work on together so that child doesn't take that out of their preschool years because we did it together. But the only way we can sometimes do that and do it well is if we play a nice game of tennis, that's that back and forth. So if at any time we have to handle something more difficult, we can do it because we have reciprocity.
So beautifully said. That it's so important because it's a true relationship, right? There's reciprocity that goes with that. I think that is so important. Nefertiti, you mentioned development, and I think that's so important. Let's dive into this a little bit. My next question is going to be for Rachel. So Rachel, development is so important in the early years, right? So what do you do if you think maybe your child's not on track? How can you tell if your child is on track? What does development look like?
So, yes, it's so important. There's so much going on in the early years. There's a million synaptic connections happening per second. They are learning everything about everything. So it's very consequential. These first 5 years of life are for the next 100 years of life. But again, what they need to have those healthy connections are the things that sometimes we think they're right in front of us, but we reach further than that. So like that reading and the play and the interactions, it's all good stuff. And most children will be on the spectrum of typical development and be just fine right in that spectrum. We're worried about, well, they can't read yet, or they can't do this yet. And usually those are unfounded concerns. Usually they don't need to do those things until they're in kindergarten and school. We're preparing them. We're building this foundation for them. They do the thing. Miriam, I'm laughing that you said that about David keeps his difficult behavior for you. And that's good news, parents, because that means you are the safe space. They love you. They trust you. They know you will love them no matter what. And Nefertiti, I know, thinks this too, because I had to remind myself of that a lot during the teen years. But we got through it. And now I'm seeing a different expression of love. But I did say that, okay, she just yelled at me for no reason because I'm her safe space. So keep repeating that to yourself when your children save their special behavior for you at home. But back, so first of all, there's a lot less to worry about than most parents worry about. So first of all, I hope that eases some of your concerns. We're often looking at achievement and scores and things to measure success, and that does not belong in early childhood. I would say it doesn't belong in most of education, but let's just keep with early childhood. So let's take that pressure off. A joyful childhood is what we need. And to understand there's a whole spectrum of development. So don't compare yourself or your child to the neighbor's child or someone you see at the park. In fact, I always say if your child is making lots of mistakes and trying trial and error and learning and exploring and getting messy, that's the thing to be real proud about versus that they made some sort of academic outcome achievement, because those are the skills that are going to help them for life. But if you are concerned or you really want to understand that typical trajectory of child development, there's a couple things you can do. One is a real high quality program will often have a research evidence-based method of ongoing assessment. So not testing, but an ongoing practice of observing children, checking out how they're doing, what they're learning, so they can create the curriculum around that. The curriculum should be responsive, not something that is just the same thing that they do every week, every year, over and over. It's responsive to those children. So you want to, if you look for that and your program has that, then you want to get involved in that. You can ask, what can I see all the developmental milestones, all the trajectory of development for my child in the classroom they're in. And that should be a real good evidence-based resource for you. If your program doesn't have something like that, you can look at external sources, and you just want to make sure, again, you're not using an untested, unfounded, unexpert resource, especially comparing each other at the playground, not your resource for checking on if your child's okay or not. So there's some things online that you can find. And of course, always your pediatrician if you're concerned. And then Nefertiti, I'm sure we'll get into this, but yes, we do. There's an opportunity for early intervention and not to be worried about that. The earlier we intervene on something, the better it is for everybody. So not to be scared of saying, you know what, my child might need a little support to be augmented here to support their development. Not worry about what that means for a lifetime diagnosis. And again, work with that partnership with your provider, with you, with the pediatrician. Just keep building that village and talking to each other about your concerns. And most of them are going to be okay, but some, if you really are concerned, don't ignore that either, and talk to the people around you.
Excellent. I love that. One, I want to do the sign for the Hunger Games, because I feel like I keep hearing that in the background.
Oh yeah.
I salute you. Nefertiti, I'm going to throw it over to you because I'm sure that you have a lot to add on development and early intervention.
Well, I think I want to answer with my mommy hat first. Again, as we share this experience as moms, go with your gut and ask questions. Go with your gut and ask questions. You know, I'm a geriatric parent. That's what the paperwork calls me. I don't consider myself a geriatric parent, but when you have a baby after 35, you get paperwork that calls you a geriatric parent. Do you see okay, I'm going to stop. But being a geriatric parent has taught me to know what I'm looking for. And so I go with my gut and I ask a lot of questions. And so I feel like for as parents, moms and dads, let's do this. Let's really get to know developmentally appropriate practices. I just did this whole series yesterday for my job where we're taking that big word, because what does that even mean? Well, at different stages, there are certain things you should expect to happen. And so when you know what those are, if you don't see them, you can ask questions. And we'll go back to Miriam's word. I'm going to go back to my partner. My child's teacher is my partner. And I'm going to ask, are you seeing the same thing? Just comparing some notes. And then the best thing is when my partner can come with me to a meeting, because my partner and I have been noticing the same things. And moms, I'm really suggesting that you do that. If you feel that something does not feel good to your spirit, then you ask up some questions and you invite your partner to do this work with you. That's why it's so important that wherever we're choosing for care, that person has to be someone you can be vulnerable with. Because sometimes we don't get our children the care that they need because we're scared or we're embarrassed or we think it has something to do with our parenting. No, ma'am. No. And if you can remember, you're not alone. You're not alone, and you don't have to do it by yourself. And if we can, help now, it may not be something that we have to take into first grade, second grade, and third grade. So go with your gut and ask questions.
Such phenomenal advice, really, such phenomenal advice. That's something I think that we as parents can take across just all the way through, right? From early childhood education through elementary school, through middle school, and then beyond. So I think that's such beautiful advice. Miriam, you were in a very very busy parent when David was younger, and you're a very busy parent now. So it wasn't exclusive to that. But what support, whether it was teachers, childcare providers, your employer, what support was most beneficial to you?
Well, I think back, I'm a little bit of a type A personality, which might contribute to the busyness. But I remember just like those early days when David was an infant, you track every ounce of milk that he's drinking, every minute of breastfeeding, every pee and poopy diaper, right? And it's all in an app, and that gives you a sense of control, even though, we all know that might sometimes not be the case. But I definitely, clung to those apps. And when he was outside of our home, outside of our direct care, it was always it was so helpful to know, kind of like to get a recap at the end of the day. David had 18 ounces of milk. He peed and pooped, or, all the things. And the more communicative that was, the more I felt like I could kind of pass the baton back and forth, because it really is about David and his day and keeping that continuity. And so, whether it's now, I think, as he ages, like we don't get those reports about ounces of milk, but we do, we get pictures from his teachers, or we'll get, a progress report. All of that communication back and forth is really is so helpful in just kind of understanding what's happening, so it doesn't just go into a black box. And the other thing that, I think particularly for working moms, I met other working moms through with their kids that were also at the childcare center. So like some of my best and oldest friends are now, they're like, our kids can play together. They play together during the week, so they know how to be nice to each other and share. And then, you get the benefit of building another community. And I think that's something that is really unique to group care settings, is kind of like meeting new friends. So that you're like before school, it's your first foray into that.
It's so true. They're like making friends at 6 weeks old. At least my son was. And those are some of your very first mom friendships. I know when my son went to daycare, and again, he was probably about three months old or so. And I was so excited to make mom friends. I was like, you have a baby, I have a baby. You're dropping him off, I'm dropping him off. Let's be friends. So
yeah, we've heard a lot from parents in this pandemic that's the thing they're missing the most. That mom village, that parent village.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Socialization is so important, whether it's for parents or for the little ones. Nefertiti, as I mentioned, socialization is so important. It's one of the perks of having your children in a school setting from an early age. How does being in a school setting help their social and emotional well-being as they develop?
I had told someone during a webinar yesterday, if you close your eyes right now and you add 10 years to what you see, that's what's that going to be? Maybe middle school. And then if you add another 10 years, that's going to be what the first year of college may look like. So we remind teachers all the time that you have somebody in your classroom. And if you want the skills that are going to be needed in our world, you have to teach them. And so when it comes to social and emotional development, I sometimes think that it gets this bad connotation. I've actually heard it. I watched this in the research where it's referred to as a soft skill. And you talk about something else that because to me, to call it a soft skill minimizes just how important it is. And so we want to make it a priority because it's a skill that must be learned. And if we don't teach it, if it doesn't get into the foundation, what is our world going to look like? If I'm super duper intelligent, I can program some software, but I do not know how to get along with my colleagues. Or I do not know what to do when I have a strong feeling within me and I don't know how to process it, because no one ever said to me, all behavior is feelings to be understood. Nobody ever told me. Somebody just said, you sit over there and think about what you did. If you want it, you have to teach it. And I think what we do at the Devereaux Center for Resilient Children is we try to make this a priority, because they are going to be 14 in just a minute and then 24 in just a few more minutes after that. And we don't want to miss this important opportunity to make sure social and emotional development walks along with the other skills that sometimes seem to be get more attention than the very important work of who they are, mind, body, and spirit. So it's important, but we got to teach it too.
It's true. At my son's school, they have a program called Care, and it's integrity, caring, attitude, respect, and empathy. And everything they do centers around that. And they actually, on the report cards, get graded on their Care as much as they do academics, reading and writing and social studies and all of those things. And I think that's so beautiful that they really embody that philosophy. So speaking of philosophies, Rachel, I'm going to throw it over to you. Can we explore some of the differences between the early education philosophies, Montessori, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah, this goes back to that first question and the naming, and you want to be thinking about that naming. A lot of centers will refer to themselves as a Montessori program or Montessori influence, so you want to understand what that means. Montessori is a term that can be used and is used generously. So to know if it's a true Montessori program, you'll want to look for a certification or accreditation by a national organization. And Montessori is a very valuable, important method of teaching young children. A lot of independence is taught through Montessori, a lot of respect for children. So the Montessori principles are applied in a lot of high quality programs, but a Montessori program that is only following the Montessori method would be one that you would look for that accreditation if that's what you're looking for. Then there's a methodology more and more people are hearing about Reggio Emilia, that those Italians are good at their early childhood philosophies. So Reggio Emilia is actually a town in Italy that it's on a bucket list for a lot of early childhood educators to go there, and you can see the practices of Reggio Emilia principles in place in the town itself with children. And there's a lot of reverence for the beauty of childhood and the beauty of the spaces children spend their time in. Some of those principles can't be practiced in the United States because of regulations, so you'll look for a Reggio influenced. You'll see that maybe with Waldorf is another philosophy that is pretty central, and you'll look for a certification or an accreditation. You want to look for that. If that's the methodology you're interested, you want to look for not somebody who just says they're influenced, but that they've been certified in that method or accredited in that method. The rest of the programs will likely have some sort of combination of theoretical influences, and you do want to ask about that. If someone answers you as, oh, we just buy this curriculum, or we just create it ourselves, or we do spring flowers because it's springtime, that's something that you want to be cautious about. You want someone that's working with your child, an early educator, to be able to reflect the principles and the philosophy and the foundational beliefs and know that it's girded in those pioneering theorists like Maria Montessori or Jean Piaget, but that it's also keeping up with contemporary research. You don't, as a parent, have to know all those details about who's Jean Piaget that she just was talking about. You don't have to know that. You just have to know what's important to you and make sure that the theoretical principles that the program is using matches that and reflects what we've been talking about with high quality. And again, if you're interested in something very specific like Montessori or Reggio, you'll look for some sort of certification from a national organization.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Because I know I was overwhelmed when my son was going to preschools and there was this philosophy and that philosophy and then this one. And I was like, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to figure it out as parents. It's certainly, and then you go on the websites, internet, and that doesn't really help you figure it out because there's so much information. But most importantly is to have something, right? That you know that your educators, that your provider is not just winging it, isn't just there to have fun, isn't making it up again on the weekends, thinking, oh, let's do something about flowers because I'm really ready for spring. So that you want that they can articulate that and that they are thinking about that. in our programs, we have something called discovery-driven learning, and it is a combination of influences, including Reggio and including Montessori, because those principles are fantastic. But we believe that there's more to it than that, than those principles and those methods allow for, like imaginary play, and of course, infants all the way through preschool and sometimes older, so that our principles are all ours. Here are our principles. Here's where it's coming from if you're interested. But if you're not interested, here's just what will happen with your children. So you want to ask those questions. And I've said this already, but and Nefertiti and Miriam have said it too, but just don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't worry about saying something. I'm worried. I don't understand this. I think I've asked it 10 times already, but I want to understand it again. We are here to work with you. That's the relationship you should have with any provider.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Nefertiti, do you want to follow up on that at all about the different philosophies?
No, I thought what Rachel did was great. I just would say though, if you don't feel like you have the relationship, I want you to stay with that feeling, because that feeling is telling you something. So if you are at a wonderful center that is doing everything that Rachel has just encouraged for us, but you don't feel like you can talk to this professional, stay with that feeling and do some investigation, because that shouldn't be. And so we if the program is amazing, but I can't talk to the teacher, stay there a little bit and investigate why you may be feeling that way.
I think that totally goes back to what you were saying earlier about like, trust your gut and ask questions, right? I think that is a big takeaway for all of that. Do we have any questions? Yeah, I was going to say we could do final. Yeah. Do we have any audience questions? If not, then we could do closing remarks. I'm just waiting to see. Okay.
I was going to share a story just kind of around the various types of learning. I will admit, I hope that I'm not, embarrassing myself too much, but when my son was 3 years old, I asked his pediatrician when we would know if he was going to Harvard. And so now you know a little bit about me. She was amazing. She was like, we have developmental milestones we look at every step along the way, and we don't really know that yet. So she, kind of humored me and was like, she's that mom. But what I've always found as a mom, as, kind of a high achiever, someone who's constantly pushing myself in my own work, is to think about what's right for my son. And, when he was 2 years old, part of me was like, okay, let's enroll him in language classes and this and that. And he should be in an academic I think, we frame it in that way a lot of times as high achievers. And it was really helpful to think about and to hear from my son's teachers about play-based learning, and to know that, okay, a UPS driver came today and the kids got really interested in boxes and in, e-commerce. And so we started talking about, how the journey of a box, and somebody ordered a shoe and where does that shoe go, and really following the curiosity of the kids in that way. And, I do sometimes check myself like, okay, like David doesn't know like that we're in winter and not spring, but what he really knows is himself, and those sort of like empathy, like those empathetic skills, like that's really how we've seen him grow and flourish into a wonderful little human. And he will ultimately learn the seasons. Like I know that this is true. Glad you guys agree with me.
He totally will.
Yeah.
He totally will. I have a similar sort of story. We used to live in New York City, and my son was going to a private preschool there. We moved out of New York City, and I was touring preschools in New Jersey, and I found one I looked at. It was Montessori. It was impressive, but I didn't love it. There was this other one that we toured where it is set on a farm where it's a lot of like dirt and cows, and the children were just running and playing with Tonka trucks in the sand, and it's sort of a Scandinavian flair to it. And I cried. I called my husband, and I called him. He was at work at the time, and I said, I found it. I found the preschool for Jack. And I'm not a crier, and I had tears in my eyes because these children were just playing. And so many times people say in my town, like, oh, well, that school's not academic enough. Well, you know what? Those kids learned how to play, and they learned how to take care of each other, and they learned about nature, and they got their hands dirty, and they had such a beautiful early childhood education there. So you know what, Miriam? He will learn the dates and all the things on the calendar and the seasons and all of that kind of stuff. It will come in time, but what you can't take back is the play that the children need to have at that age.
I have to say this. Joyful childhoods build the foundation for all that is next. You two are right on. I'm so excited for you and your children. Earlier is not better. It does not make it better to know things, know content, know things you can memorize earlier. What matters is those millions of synapses getting really strong, building good relationships, understanding who you are, being able to connect with others, and that exploration and discovery and joy. That's what you're looking for in early childhood. And with that, you've got it. And Miriam and Tara, those were perfect examples of what real good, high quality childcare looks like.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Nefertiti. Thank you to Bright Horizons for sponsoring this panel. This was amazing. And thank you to Mother Honestly.